There isn't another color in Riftbound discussed with the same intensity as purple. You can see that for yourself if you head into the comment section on a newly revealed purple card from Unleashed, or hell, a tournament results post with a lot of Dravens in the top cut. I believe I can point to specific reasons within the color's design philosophy and its gameplay patterns that shape the arguments in that discussion. I'm Simon from Games Deconstructed, and let's get started! Now, we need to address the elephant in the room here, which is purple's raw strength, which is undeniable. Both community consensus and tournament results point to the top decks in the format being Draven, in its 3-ish forms, Irelia, either Ezreal or Kai'Sa, and then Victor or Sivir. And 4 out of these 6 are purple. But in my opinion, purple's strength is more of a catalyst, for the reasons I'm about to talk about. It's a force multiplier that increases the scale of these concerns until they transition into general discontent or doom posting. And in a vacuum where we wouldn't know which decks or cards are the best, these same arguments could very well apply to cards like Zenith Blade or Sabotage. And the argument I'd like to start with here is presented, if a bit bluntly, through this meme edit of a comment from Dave Guskin, Riftbound's design director. This is the original for context, and comparing the two gives us the gap between designer intent and community reception. And that community reception is that purple does fucking everything, actually. Now, there's a subcategory of this argument fueled by people coming into Riftbound from Magic the Gathering, which is very rigid about what its colors are supposed to do versus not permitted to do. This is something that Magic designers are quite vocal about, pointing to past mistakes or exceptions to those rules in their communication, and people bring in those expectations into Riftbound. Now, I'm personally okay with the identities of our colors being a bit broader, a bit more relaxed, provided that all colors follow the same general definition of broad and relaxed. But purple, and this is obviously going to be an opinion, I don't have access to any sort of internal info, seems to be designed with the very broad identity of sneaky stuff, underhanded tactics, and rule breaking. And I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent here, but I promise it's related and it's going to illustrate the problem with this approach really well, I think. There's a tabletop RPG system out there called Fate Accelerated. And instead of traditional stats, your strength, your charisma, it has approaches. Careful, forceful, and indeed, sneaky. When you attempt a test with a given approach, you add a bonus depending on how high your stat in that approach is. So if you're a master thief, you probably have a high sneaky. What this results in is players attempting to mold the narrative so that they can describe how hitting someone in the face is actually sneaky, not forceful. Or like, consoling a crying widow is actually sneaky, not careful. And my experience is that it's surprisingly easy to do that once you've gotten a bit of practice, because approaches, doing something in an X way, an X fashion, is very easy to kind of staple on top of a process. And in card games, that applies not only to the flavor of the card, the narrative aspect, what it portrays, but also to the mechanics. There can be mechanics that make the player's IRL feel like one of them is being sneaky. I mean, the flavor for Bone Skewer could very well be orange. You're bringing out a worthy challenger from your opponent's hand for you to fight to prove that you're the mightiest. But the effect feels underhanded, it's a dirty rat effect from Hearthstone, so that's a good fit for purple apparently. And the sum of these two halves creates a bucket that's very broad. It allows for a variety of effects to fit into it. Stuns, discard, forced movement, moving your own units at action speed, counter spells, conditional for the time being, thank god, hidden, graveyard interaction, the list goes on. And of course, there are still limits that the design team seems to observe when designing for purple. Like, there's not a lot of might manipulation tricks in it, for example, with the exception of Switcheroo and kind of Edge of Night, I guess. There is some on signature spells as well, but we can assume that they borrow that part from the other color of their respective legend. And I'd say that switcheroo is a good example of this purple identity exceptions-based school of design here. Purple generally doesn't get those might bonus / might malus effects, except for this one time where it feels absolutely sneaky, and as a result they can't get that effect. Now of course we occasionally have the opposite idea, where other colors may also step on purple's toes in terms of design. We can have Azir, Emperor's Divide, or Bard as friendly unit movement. Red is of course supposed to have discards as well, but now there's a bit of it in blue with LeBlanc, Hui, and Gutter Palace. Trash interaction is super broad and pretty much evenly spread across colors, with Matron and Mixologist in yellow, and Guardian of the Passage in green, or Aspiring Engineer in blue, for example. But without the force multiplier of being the top color in the format, green having action speed unit movement, or even reaction speed unit movement, you can, if you hide Emperor's Divide, kind of build your own flash, that fact remains rather uncontroversial. And new cards that broaden the identities of other colors, which is also happening as we speak with Unleashed spoilers, they don't get the same reactions of, wow, this color has everything, as purple. Now, to attack the topic from a different angle, a lot of purple's unique play patterns and most interesting designs kind of skirt the rules of what's otherwise possible in the game. Scoring a point off of Ride the Wind on your opponent's turn feels illegal, compared to like having a guy with big might. And for good reason, because it's an exception to the otherwise stated rules of the game. If you don't play Ride the Wind, you're not allowed to score on your opponent's turn, most likely, unless they really mess up with like a charm effect, while everyone gets to attack with a big might unit. At least most decks do. Sure, every color has some of these exceptions. I mean, that's what card text is for, broadly speaking. It establishes special cases that the rules text doesn't account for. But purples are pretty numerous, memorable, and very playable. And I think that last one shows why the same scrutiny doesn't extend to something like Zenith Blade, which is also an exception to the same no scoring on your opponent's turn rule. Another effect in that vein that's maybe slightly less controversial now is Sneaky Deckhand, but it definitely irked some people when it was played in Ani in Origins. People looked at the effect, recognized that you're not supposed to be able to conquer a battlefield on your first turn going second, and yet, the best deck in the format gets to make an exception to that rule. And there's an argument here to be made that these both feel kinda good for the player playing them. I know I enjoyed both of them back when I played Ani in Origins. And they are going to be a potential source of friction. And friction, of course, unavoidable in any card game or indeed any sort of competitive game, but it needs to be controlled. Now, if we squint really hard, we might even extend this argument to purple's standout energy efficiency. Because most colors, that's the rule, have to pay energy to draw cards, to establish units, or, I don't know, play Bellows Breath, and purple's multitude of discounts and the ability to play with power more often than energy feels like the player is getting away with something, feels like an exception to the overall rule. It's also not without its impact on player perception that a good number of the good cards in purple happen to be negative interaction, as in, they try to mess with your opponent rather than help your own board state. And I mean that's obviously not 100%, Cold Shot or Purple Ezreal don't really touch your opponent, but I mean effects like Rebuke, Fight or Flight, Hard Bargain, Mind Splitter. All of them belong in the camp of effects that will always cause friction. Removal, counter spells, discard, forced movement, which takes away the opponent's control over their own cards, all of those cause friction and they happen to be quite strong in the current format. And these factors can be a lightning rod for criticism. As an anecdote, I think the most negative comments I've seen on Unleashed spoilers happened to be under Abandon, which is a counterspell, and Existential Dread, which is a Rebuke spin-off. And you can probably see how these three sets of reasons kind of feed into each other. Purple's identity as the sneaky color, the rule-breaking color, causes it to have more of these rules-transgressive designs or negative interaction designs. And this then sets the trajectory for the criticism. and then purple's current raw strength, raw power, pushes the energy and the emotion alongside this trajectory, resulting in the criticism that we see now. Let me know in the comments where you stand on this topic. I give you full permission to both doom post and hope post, whichever you like. If you've enjoyed the video, I will greatly appreciate a like and a sub. Otherwise, I've been Simon from Games Deconstructed. Thanks a lot for watching, and a special thank you to the Patreon supporters over on patreon.com/gamesdeconstructed, especially Ola Bryner, Jakub Burdun, and Dillinger. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.